And welcome back. You're listening to Hysteria, the podcast for people who are always going to vote anti-weasel and anti-chode. Speaking of chodes and weasels, we made a really fun video about the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, wherein we roast him.
I'm not sure anyone roasts better than you, Erin. It is a gift that is second to none. I genuflect at your skill.
Thank you. It comes from a place of deep self-loathing. So thank you. I'm really glad I'm able to externalize it in a way that feels productive. But yeah, Mike Johnson, real freak, real weirdo, bad ideas that nobody likes. And you can learn more about why he sucks if you go to Hysteria's channel on YouTube or go to our show notes and you can find the video. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Felt like I needed to take a shower after reading as much as I'd read about him and his weird porn app that him and his son share.
So gross.
His son's name is Jack. And he has his son's name is, look. He's a teenage boy named Jack. What is Jack doing?
Like jack off?
Yeah, it's just...
okay. Sometimes I'm a little behind. I just had to make sure we were all on the same... Juanita, you hear me.
It is. I just was like, oh my God.
No, if this was a script, if this was an episode of a TV show and there was a character named Mike Johnson and him and his son Jack had anti-porn apps on their phone so they could spy on each other, I would be like, change those guys' names. I don't want a Johnson and a Jack involved in this. It's too on the nose. It undermines what we're trying to do. Anyway, he's a weirdo. The Speaker of the House is a weird guy. Super excited for our conversation today. We are ebullient, I would say. We are effervescent. We are
floating.
Upbeat. We are feeling the generalized anxiety and neuroses dissipate. Temporarily. Don't worry, things will be cloudy again in a week. But we're really excited to talk about the incredible election results that Democrats saw on Tuesday across the country. And joining us to talk about all that and maybe, gloat.
Yeah,
just a tad.
It's time.
A little bit.
Just a tad.
Joining us is political strategist, opinion writer, MSNBC political analyst, and one of our favorites, in addition to being Crooked's What a Day podcast co-host, Juanita Tolliver. Welcome back to Hysteria.
Hi. You all only have me on the good days, and I want to keep that going.
It's a chicken or egg thing. Is it like, because we were like, let's get Juanita on before we knew about the election results.
But see, I was confident the whole time. People were looking at me crazy when I was on air on TV on Tuesday, like on earlier in the election day, because I was like, oh, I feel good. I'm hyped. They were like, but what about the poll? What about this? What about abortion being old? I was like, it never gets old. It never gets old. And you know why? Because Republicans keep coming with their shitty bans, because they keep attacking our basic rights, and because people will continuously be pissed off by that. So I'm feeling good. I was feeling good early in election day. I'm feeling good now.
Isn't that there's an old saying that the definition of insanity is doing something the exact same way over and over again and expecting a different result?
Ding,
and that
ding,
is
ding.
literally what we're seeing with Republicans across the country. They do not get it. They've tried telling us the truth about what they believe. They've tried not talking about it. They've tried straight up lying about it. None of it's worked. It's crazy. And yet they still try it. Alyssa, walk us through what you were most excited about on Tuesday night when election returns started coming in.
Okay, so many things. First, let's talk about Glenn Youngkin, the Youngkin, Wunkin, Pumpkin. Do you guys think he's going to have to hang up his finance bro vest for a little bit? I mean, he took it out for a spin. He really was like, he's like, look, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip the House and the Senate. We're going to have the trifecta, Republican, 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 and then I'll have to keep my promise and run for president. Well, Glenn, you said it loud enough. Everybody heard ya. And Virginia is now still safe for abortions. Democrat House, Democratic Senate. Glenn Youngkin crying tears in his closet.
I mean, I don't know how like absorbent those vests are when it comes to tears, but maybe they should start making them specifically for
absorbent, like Charmin.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what is absorbent? Because he not only wears the vest, but he also wears jorts. Like he's like, I'm a soccer dad in my vest and my jorts, and I'm not harmful in any way. But we see you, Glenn Youngkin.
We see you.
We see
with
you,
your
Glenn
hair
Youngkin.
swoop and your vest, and you're always smiling and your white teeth. Malevolent villain teeth is what he has.
What I think was really funny about, so, you know, like when a little kid knows a secret and they're not supposed to tell it, and you can tell that they're just like, I want to say it. I want to say it. I want to say it. And you're like, don't say the thing. I feel like that's Republicans with abortion. So we saw Glenn Youngkin on literally, I think, voting day, on the last day to vote. On voting day, knowing that abortion is a losing issue for Republicans.
Yeah.
On voting day, Youngkin's sitting there trying to bite on his fists and not say it. And he's like, we're going to pass a ban. We're going to ban abortion. We're going to do it. And that was like his closing argument.
Like, yes, we can. Nah, someone tried that, Glenn. No, you can't.
We're going to ban abortion. And then voters were like, okay, well, we don't want you to do that. And so, I mean, not only did Democrats, like you said, Alyssa, hold the state Senate, they flipped the House of Delegates. So
Gorgeous.
Now instead of having only one chamber between Youngkin and his beloved abortion ban, now there are two chambers, and it's a complete non-starter in addition to his presidential campaign probably also being a complete non-starter.
And on top of him not being able to ban abortion, Virginia elected its first transgender state representative, Danica Rome, with 52% of the vote. Guys, do you know what I feel like today is? I feel like the three of us rolled up into one. We're like Oprah, and we're giving our 2023 favorite things. This is like,
and you get a car, and you get a car.
You get an abortion, and you get an abortion.
Yes.
Abortions and healthcare for everybody.
And you get to kick the weird, creepy member of the state Senate out of your stirrups in the OBGYN office. I want to talk about Ohio.
Yes.
I want to talk about Ohio. This was the one that was the most exciting to me personally. And I think part of that is because I personally have been very down on Ohio since the year 2000. So for a very long time.
Okay. There's a lot of levels to this. Yes.
Yes. I think I've been very down on Ohio because I think to the nationwide, Ohio is represented as a very red state where a Republican conservative government is pretty entrenched. But inside Ohio, what's happening is that things are a lot more interesting. And it seems that the gerrymandered Republican state government has gotten a little too cocky and didn't quite understand that they live in a state where a 50% vote, 50% plus one vote can change the state constitution via a public referendum. And so what happened is that representatives in Ohio got so disconnected from the will of the people, they passed a 6-week abortion ban, which people don't like. The public was like, all right, we're going to go over you. We're going to leapfrog you. And an amendment to the Ohio state constitution guaranteeing abortion access, guaranteeing miscarriage care, guaranteeing all types of reproductive health care passed with 57% of the vote.
Which, Erin, what I love about this is that the referendum or the election in August was about amending the Constitution. So it would have to go up to 60%. And any amendment added to the state constitution would have to pass a supermajority of 60%. And guess what? It almost got there on its own all by itself. So also fuck you twice.
Fuck you twice.
I just also got to shout out the organizers on the ground who had been organizing since last summer against that, special election Republicans tried to slip in there in August because they did the damn thing on multiple levels. One, the message was so clear and so effective that it was like a foregone conclusion in the minds of voters who were showing up at polls. They're like, of course I'm supporting Ohio, like the First Amendment. Like, of course I'm supporting that. And it wasn't even a doubt. The other layer here, though, is what it's been clear, whether it's Kansas, Kentucky, Montana, Michigan, where there have been other ballot initiatives related to abortion care. And that's the reality that abortion rights transcend demographics. They transcend party affiliation. You saw men turning out for this, majority of men voting for this, Black and Latino voters at 75, 85% supporting this. And then across the ages, that's what I love when I see people 45 plus supporting abortion rights at what? 70% and 80% among young people. Like that's what it's about. And of course, Democrats showed up. Independents also showed up at 64% support of this. And you got like 20% of Republicans too in the mix. So that's what it's going to be every single time. And that's why Republicans will forever lose when it comes to abortion.
I was just going to say, I wanted to shout out Kelly Copeland, who runs Pro-Choice Ohio. She has been doing this work for 20 years. She told everybody that it was going to happen, meaning that she said, you always got to be careful. They're going to overturn Roe. And then they did. And anyway, so she has now enshrined it in the Ohio Constitution. And yay, Kelly Copeland.
I'm going to just say this, not to pour cold water on it, because it was a decisive victory. Mm-hmm. I will not put it past and do not put it past the Ohio state government to try to somehow weasel around with this.
Of course.
Because weasels are always going to weasel.
Weasels are always going to weasel. And I think that it is very ill-advised for them, because there are rumblings in Ohio that in 2024, the next constitutional amendment will be an amendment that will take away the right to draw districts from a political party and put it in the hands of a nonpartisan panel. So, fuck around and find out, Republicans in Ohio, because they're about to, I feel like a political realignment of the state of Ohio is happening before our eyes. It's really exciting. It's got to be very terrifying if you're a Republican who thought you could just do whatever you wanted to whoever you wanted and suffer no political consequences whatsoever, because the chickens are coming home to roost. The chickens are coming home.
Welcome to repercussions.
Yes, indeed. Also, Ohio legalized recreational marijuana, which is super cool for them.
Yes.
And really exciting. It won with about the same percentage as the right to abortion won. The marijuana legislation is a law, not a constitutional amendment. Right. So the state legislature has a little bit more leeway in what they can do to it than they can do to a constitutional amendment, but pretty exciting stuff. Let's move on to Pennsylvania. Good news there too. Alyssa, what do we got out of Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania first. Sherelle Parker wins mayor of Philadelphia, 74%. She is Philadelphia's 100th mayor and the first woman ever.
That's one of those things where it's like, yay.
Yay. Glad it happened. Sad it took so long.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's like returning a library book 15 years after it was due. It's like, well, thank you for bringing it back, but you should have brought it back a while ago.
And then also, Erin, something we've been talking about, Pennsylvania had a state Supreme Court election, all about saving democracy in the general, saving abortion. Daniel McCaffrey, the Democrat, wins with 52.9% of the vote right now. That means that the makeup of the court is 5-2, right? Did I get that right?
It's 5-2.
5-2.
Yeah. And I think in 2025, there were some kind of key elections coming up that if McCaffrey hadn't won, there would have been a bunch of different ways the Republicans could have taken control over the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court and held on to control until like 2031, which isn't a year, right? That year doesn't exist.
No, it does not. We're not going that far.
We're not going that
far.
That's not. Sometimes I look at years that are, and I'm like, that's not a real year. 2031.
Nope.
Yeah. I also had some fun like personal news in Pennsylvania. My brother-in-law's sister, Jill Beck, won a judgeship in the Superior Court.
Oh, cool. Which is sister-in-law.
One of my brother's wife's sister. We call each other sister-in-law. So I guess that's what
I love it.
Yeah. But congratulations to Judge Beck, because that's super exciting and very fun. Let's move on. What do you want to talk about next? Juanita, you're the guest. What else comes to mind?
Can we talk about the blatant voter suppression in Mississippi?
Yeah,
in Mississippi, where they provided extremely limited numbers of ballots to predominantly Black precinct locations, where, police officers casually strolled through the parking lot of the local NAACP and took down license plates and ran people's tags, or set up their cars outside the entrance to Jackson State University to try to deter people from voting, because that's what's happening in Mississippi right now. And I know that Brandon Presley was able to file a request successfully to extend polls being opening in some of these locations where you had people waiting 2 and 3 hours in line. And every time the precincts ran out of ballots, the Secretary of State only sent 100 more at a time. So it's just like the most blatant form of voter suppression that we need to get to the bottom of, because when we talk about democracy as a theme for 2024, this needs to be one of the battlegrounds for that fight. Like, I know Democrats tend to look at Mississippi and are like, hey, nothing to really do there. Turnout's only about 40%. But why? Turnout's typically only 40% in Mississippi because they don't allow early in-person voting. They extremely restrict absentee and vote by mail options. So literally people only have that one day where polls close, typically at 6 p.m. So if you couldn't get out of work, if you couldn't find childcare, if you couldn't just get there through transportation, then you were just unable to vote. You were disenfranchised. And so what we're seeing in Mississippi needs to be addressed at a national level. So every microphone I'm in front of for the next year and a half, y'all will hear me talk about this.
Good. I mean, I think it's one of those situations that thrives on hopelessness.
Period. Yes.
Because in order for this to continue, people just need to be like, oh, it's Mississippi, whatever. It's Mississippi. Like, they're never going to vote Democrat. They're never going to vote Democrat. And I think that a lot of people are kind of guilty of just kind of dismissing it. But when there's a light shown on it, and when we see the lengths that people are going to suppress the vote, specifically the Black vote in Mississippi, that I think that kind of is like, no, actually, this isn't a hopeless place. This is a place where injustice is being done and needs to be righted. And also, Juanita, when you're talking about like police taking down license plates and like being intimidating, it sort of reminds me of, a lot of times election years, especially off years, people will say things like, and they're usually privileged people, they'll say things like, well, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter. If voting doesn't matter, then why are people willing to resort to such violence to prevent people from voting?
Right.
Voting absolutely matters.
That part.
Yeah. Okay, Kentucky. You want to talk about Kentucky, Alyssa?
Sure.
Governor Beshear. This is such incredible news. And, as is the case with every election night, you start watching, polls close, results start to trickle in. And you're like, where's Louisville? It was looking very Daniel Cameron at the outset. You're like, oh no, what's going to happen? But Governor Andy Beshear wins with 52.5% of the vote in Kentucky. He is only the third two-term governor in Kentucky history.
Yeah, wasn't his dad one of the others?
Yeah, and he's a Democrat.
Yeah, that was super exciting. And he was running against a person that was pretty contemptible. Juanita, what do you make of Beshear's opponent, Cameron?
I love that you come to me for this, right? So you have people like Daniel Cameron, who did not seek any form of justice when it came to the murder of Breonna Taylor, who actively fought for the statewide abortion ban in Kentucky, right? Just a contemptible, horrible dude. And so I wasn't rooting for him. I definitely didn't want him to get anywhere near the governor's office. But what I knew going into this race is that he actually never had a shot. You know why? Because Andy Beshear had a 60% approval rating, again, that transcended partisan lines. And so when you go into a race with that, it makes sense that he walked away with 52% of the vote. It also makes sense that Beshear won this race by 5 percentage points thus far. But in 2019, y'all, he only won by 0.4 percentage points. Like, he expanded the margin by doing such a good job that someone like Daniel Cameron absolutely never had a shot.
Mm-hmm. And something that I noticed, this always happens and it's irksome, but after elections where there's a upside surprise for Democrats, people are trying to extrapolate lessons that apply to the entire country. And we had James Carville being like, Andy Beshear is the most talented politician since Bill Clinton, which means maybe Beshear would have been president in the 90s. I don't know. I think it's important for us as media consumers to take all of the sort of punditry, enthusiasm, exuberance, or like thirst to come up with some giant conclusion or storyline with like a huge grain of salt. Like, this is the story of what happened in Kentucky. A person did a good job and was well liked by a lot of people, and he was rewarded for doing a good job and being well liked for a lot of people. I don't think that means that like Andy Bashir should be the Secretary of State. You know what I mean? I feel
definitely not.
That people. I mean, I just pulled that completely out of my ass, but. That doesn't mean that Andy Bashir should run for president. That doesn't mean it means that he did a good job for the people of Kentucky and the people of Kentucky.
Period.
And he should stay there to do a good job for the people of Kentucky. Yeah, keep going. That's the thing. We can't pluck these people out.
Michigan's Mallory McMurrow, one of our favorites, super talented, young legislator in the state of Michigan, is not running for the open Senate seat in Michigan next year. And she's like, there's work to do in Michigan. I want to do work for the people in Michigan. And I think it's really important for us to understand the value of talented, competent politicians who do work at the local and state level. We don't want them all at the federal level. They can barely do anything compared to
we don't need a 20-way Democratic primary.
No, we sure do not. Let's talk about Texas. Texas seems the homestead tax exemption won. Pretty big time. It looks like John Whitmire and Sheila Jackson Lee are headed to a runoff in the Houston mayoral race. And the results for the Uvalde mayor race was disappointing. One of the people that was defeated in the race was a mother of a child who was killed in the Uvalde massacre, and she did not end up winning the race. Let's pivot a little bit to, I guess there was a lot of like cable news heads exploding. Not yours, Juanita, because you saw it coming. Never yours.
I stay level.
We saw a lot of heads exploding and pants on fire and people just running around screaming with their hands in the air over some poll results that came out in the last few days. Basically, Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states a year out from the 2024 election. And yet, despite this, Democrats had a clean sweep almost last night. In all of the races that we could reasonably hope to win, we won. Alyssa, what's going on?
A lot of Americans think Joe Biden's old.
Do you think that's it?
I think that this is just a very contentious time. I do think that, on the one hand, I wish this is just a perspective, I guess, that I have. It's like Donald Trump, the fact that people in polls think that Joe Biden is too old, but Donald Trump is not, blows my mind, because Joe Biden is currently the acting he is the president. He is dealing with a million things. Trump's only job is to blow dry his hair and show up for trial every day. That is his only job. He's not even campaigning. He has one job. And I think that, does Biden look more tired? And yeah, he does, because he's actually working and doing shit like 20 hours a day. And Trump is just trying through the course of dealing with 90 plus indictments to stay out of prison.
Juanita, what do you make of the bad polling versus the good results?
I mean, I think the polling is something that I will never get hype about polling, y'all.
Never.
Especially a year out. But I do think it represents a growth opportunity, if you will, for Democrats. And I say that because Biden's campaign made a conscious decision to not spend the second half of 2023 on the campaign trail. They said, we're going to focus on the job of the presidency. And this is one of those drawbacks. Without the increased visibility, while Republicans are looking stupid every week, every day, whether it's the debate stage or the campaign trail, you don't really have the day-to-day juxtaposition that could warrant a higher degree of voter support or voter buy-in. And so once he gets out on the campaign trail, demonstrates that physical fitness, because campaigning is hard, y'all. Campaigning is exhausting. Like, once he demonstrates that every single day while also doing the job of the presidency, I can see a lot of this changing. Because what did come through, even though Biden was very hands-off in these 2023 elections, his policies shine through. Andy Bashir was front and center talking about, investments in transportation. Look at these bridges. Look at these train tracks, all of that. That's what's going to be key here. So Biden on the campaign trail telling people explicitly what he delivered by pointing to it, because we're a visual learners in this country. So when he's standing out there pointing at this beautiful train or this beautiful new facility, like, that's going to be key.
And I got to tell you something, Juanita, to that point, that I have been on, insurgent campaigns. I got to be on a campaign when Barack Obama, was not president. And then I got to be on the re-elect. So let me tell you something. Re-elect way worse, because when you're running, if you are any of these, nuts running for the Republican nomination, you can point out all the problems and say, this is how I'm going to fix them. When you're running as the incumbent, you have to say, yeah, there are still problems, which you own because you're the president. And here's how we're also going to fix them. So if he's trying to talk about things to help the economy, he is implicitly saying the economy could be better. And that is never easy. And the one thing, even, I will say that in 2004, when I was on the Kerry campaign, we were doing okay. But when election day came, America was like, I don't know, I think we got to stick with the devil we know. So it's especially when you are running against an incumbent, I always think that polls are a great way to act out because you're mad, but it's definitely a wake-up call to the Bidens. You go. Tossing to you, Juanita.
One more thing about polls. Get into these crosstabs, because every time we see a negative number about the economy, go to the line where it says, how do you feel about your personal financial situation? 60% are satisfied or doing better than expected. That's what kills me. They have this personal perspective, but when it comes to the big map, when it comes to everybody else they know, apparently they think they're struggling. And so when Democrats can bridge that divide of like, no, you're okay, like that'll be clear.
Yeah, I also think, I agree with both of you that the polls are super flawed, and it's very frustrating as somebody who has worked in media since like the 2012 election to watch us collectively, as members of the media and as members of the public, just step on a field of rakes when it comes to polls over and over again. Like
I see the cartoon visual.
Yes, every damn time. So here's the thing. Just because you are not satisfied with how the president, you don't really like what the president's doing, doesn't mean you're like going to choose to replace him. And Alyssa, you brought up George W. Bush's second term. I think he had there were periods of time where he didn't have a great approval rating in the run up to the 2004 election.
Not at all.
He still won because people were like, I don't know, I don't want to test. We're in the middle of a war.
Right.
I don't want to test out, On the other hand, I would say that if I were Joe Biden or somebody who worked for him or somebody who cared about him getting elected and my livelihood depended on it, I would say that Joe Biden needs to do a lot more to convince millennials and Gen Z to vote for him than he's currently doing. And here's 100%. Why. Because people, his administration's response to what's happening in Gaza right now has been unacceptable to a lot of people who are a millennial and Gen Z. Michigan has more Arab American voters than the number of votes Joe Biden won by in 2020. He needs to do a better job reaching out to people in his party who want him to more strongly condemn the way that the Israeli military is acting in Gaza right now. So that's one thing. Second thing, I think that millennials, Juanita, you brought up people's personal finances and how they're doing. I think older people are doing just great.
Right.
They're doing great. But millennials right now, and I'm one of them. I would love to own a home. I would love to. But I absolutely can't right now because, first of all, I live in Southern California and like every bungalow is $1 million and that's ridiculous. I refuse to pay that much money for a bungalow. But second of all, interest rates are so high and housing is so expensive. And the supply of housing is not being increased. The supply of affordable housing is not being increased in any way that benefits younger people who want to buy a home or access home ownership in one way or another. Also, healthcare. Healthcare is a problem. Student loans. That's something that,
That's the part.
There's a workaround right now for people that are experiencing a lot of pain from student loans, but that's not as well publicized as Biden's original student loan forgiveness that the Supreme Court struck down. I think that Biden needs to make a better case to millennial and Gen Z voters that he hears their concerns, he cares about their opinions, because I think the worst thing that could happen to Biden is too many of us stay home. That's how we lose in 2024. And I don't really think that it's I don't think that it's a rational choice to be like, oh, well, I don't like Joe Biden doing I don't like that I still have to pay my student loans. I'm just not going to vote. I don't think that that's like great to make a choice that enables Trump to waltz back into the White House. But I see that as a choice that a lot of people will make, whether or not it is rational. So yeah. That's my
I appreciate the hard reality. Like, it's a splash of cold water because and I think now is the time to have that conversation. And I do think about the student loan specifically. And I was like, so we're restarting payments October 2023. Well, I guess that's better than October 2024. Right. I'm thinking through the logic of what the campaign or what the administration is thinking here, because you're right. A lot of people I know are looking at this like, oh, there's really no benefit for me here. I think the other saving grace in part of this equation is looking at somebody like who got a mug like Donald Trump, who is facing 91 federal criminal charges, right? Like that, I think, is what it comes back to, is the comparison there. I do think we are still going to see a depression in voter turnout, and that's just a reality. But to hang on to what he's got, you're absolutely right, Erin. He needs to better communicate, better recognize his shortcomings, and provide solutions. Provide better solutions.
You know how he could win, honestly? This would motivate a ton of people to vote for him. Family leave. Make it
without question.
Happen.
Without
Make
question.
Make it happen. Make paid family leave happen. Not just for parents,
but
for anybody who's taking care of somebody else in their family, whether it's a disabled spouse, sibling, parent, whatever. Fucking family leave. It is barbaric that we don't have it. It is unacceptable that we don't have it. It's ridiculous that Maserati Mansion, Joe Manchin, was able to single-handedly...
Houseboat Mansion.
Yeah, he drives a Maserati that is so... I'm sorry. I'm not a car person, but I know Maseratis suck.
I'll take him in my Subaru any day.
Not the Subaru, Alyssa.
That's right. I brought up the Subaru.
If Joe Manchin drove a Subaru, I would be like, maybe he's a reasonable person. Maybe he can be convinced. But he drives a Maserati. It's like, this guy. Anyway, I think that like paid family leave or some form of relief for the extreme cost of medical care would make a huge difference. But we can wish all we want. It's just... we'll see if they actually listen to us. But
I'm just like, do it. You ain't got nothing else to lose. Just do it.
Yeah, I know. Like, okay,
you literally don't have anything else to lose.
So what the Chamber of Commerce makes a bunch of ads where like actresses being like, I'm a concerned mom and I need to go to work and not have, I don't want to stay home with my kids. Meh. Like they're going to make a bunch of dumb ads that are an astroturfed fake grassroots campaign, making it seem like family leave is not one of the most popular things that doesn't currently exist in America. But why can't we just, why aren't we all Ohio? This is the first time I've ever said that sentence.
Wow,
but I would love it if we
could
pass 50% plus one vote. I wish that we could amend the U.S. Constitution by doing that, because we would have a lot more nice things than we currently have. Mm-hmm. Alyssa, let's talk Trump trial. What's going on?
We're
getting
talk about
Wednesdayed
it
a little.
Not entirely, Erin, because I was so obsessed with Ivanka testifying today at the civil fraud trial here in New York that I have had the TV on because I knew they would be taking a break around lunchtime and we would get some gossip. So Trump's on trial in New York, civil fraud trial. Tish James not having any of it. It sounds like absolute chaos happening in the courtroom. Donald Trump cannot contain himself, keeps saying wild shit, which then prompts the attorney general, who is a very serious person, to laugh at him because he is so outrageous. One of my favorite readouts from the trial, it was either yesterday or the day before, was when the judge asked him, about his handling of certain documents in 2021. And he said, I was very busy with the foreign affairs as I was president. He's like, you were literally not president in 2021.
Massive yikes. And we're talking about age here. Check this man.
That's what I'm saying. If you don't know what you did with your documents 3 years ago, you should stop with calling other people old or having dementia.
That's why I think he was like, I think he was playing president for a lot of his time that he was there. He was like, like a little kid playing Office.
Oh, yeah. He watched 100%. A couple movies. He watched some Harrison Ford movies. He watched a little West Wing. And he's like, I got this. And just repeated stupid statements and got in and out of cars and out of the plane and thought that he was doing the job of president. Let us not forget when he was tweeting at Kim Jong-un. That was always great. But
do you have one of the millennial or the medallions, the commemorative medals from the Kim Jong-un
Decided
meeting?
not to. Not to.
Okay.
Thought that was something best got on eBay years later.
Oh, that's gold. That's gold. People who really have that's ironic gold.
This is like this is tremendous. One, his sons in their testimony over the past couple of days have distanced themselves from being attached to any of the tomfoolery that he did and how he valued his assets. And to remind everybody who's not following this closely, the fraud trial can essentially be boiled down to the fact that if you're someone who has a 1,000 square foot apartment that's worth $100,000, but because you lived in it, you told them it was worth $100 million and therefore got a loan to that effect and insurance to that effect. That's fraud. That's what Donald Trump did. He inflated square footage of places he owned. He outrageously inflated value to the one point saying that because he lived at Mar-a-Lago, he knew a Saudi who would have paid like $400 million for it.
Oh, I think, did he say like billions of dollars?
Yeah, there is nothing legal about any of that. That is not how people do business. That is fraud, which is why he is on trial for fraud. The part as people consider voting for him is that he's literally feigned ignorance to anything brought before him. He's like, I don't know, could have happened. Is that what you want in a president? Morals aside, because we know his morals. But like, he doesn't remember anything he did for the last 20 years. And you know who else doesn't remember anything, it seems? Ivanka. So as the court is on recess right now, the news out of New York City was that Ivanka has distanced herself from the inflated value of the penthouse she leased from her dad. And also she's doing some jiggery-pokery around that $2 billion Deutsche Bank loan. Because remember, so much of this relates to his dealings with Deutsche Bank. And apparently she is the one who made the connection for him at Deutsche Bank.
Oh.
So it's crazy here in New York, but people are enjoying it, including the courtroom sketch artist.
Oh, yeah. That picture of Donald Trump melting like a candle.
Yes. Yes. It's like he's that Carvel clown cake and they left him out. The party is long since over and his cone nose is on the floor.
Oh. Cookie Puss. Isn't that Cookie Puss?
Cookie Puss. Good work.
I have to Google this. I've never heard of it.
It is it's a regional New York thing and it's super weird and I
delicious.
Oh, I'm startled.
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable. Let me close this tab.
Oh my God. I think, so Alyssa, what happens what happens at the end of this trial, this civil trial in New York?
Okay. So at the end of the trial, here's what could happen. If Trump is found guilty and his children have abandoned ship and no one defends him, Trump could get his business licenses permanently revoked in the state of New York, which would be catastrophic. Trump Inc. would cease to exist if that happened. He could also have huge fines and stuff like that. But the most important thing is that he and his sons and people associated with the Trump organization could be barred from doing business in New York State.
At what point do you think Ivanka changes her name? How many years out?
Listen, she already moved to Florida.
She moved to Florida. She's distancing herself. She is no longer involved in politics. I think she's going to Kim Kardashian's birthday party.
All the time.
How long until she's Ivanka Kushner?
I feel like Ivanka Kushner is just right around the corner. I feel like pre-2024, there'll be a new Instagram handle. But Erin, the whole thing that makes me laugh about all of this, everything happening down in Manhattan, is that, do you remember months ago, maybe it wasn't even months ago, time has no meaning to me anymore, when we were like, oh, it's Trump's birthday, let's see what Ivanka posted. And the only thing she posted to celebrate her father's birthday were a few pictures in the caption, I hope you get what you deserve this year.
I hope you have the year you deserve.
I
hope you have the year you deserve.
And I feel like her dreams are coming true. He is indeed getting the year she deserves. The question is, Erin, will Ivanka get the year we think she deserves?
No, and I think she's going to feel entitled to our forgiveness for the rest of her life. She's going to feel entitled to being able to move along, like around in polite society. She's going to feel entitled to be treated like an American princess. And like, here's the thing. I think that the 2023 elections and every election since Dobbs has proven that female anger has longevity. It has durability and longevity.
We tend to our grudges.
Indeed. And I don't think that we're going to forget very quickly. We didn't forget what the Supreme Court did. I don't think we're going to forget what she did. Nope. And so however quickly she thinks she can come back and be part of some sort of functional, socially acceptable entity, multiply that time period by 3, and then maybe we'll talk Ivanka. That's my prediction. Okay, one more thing. Republican debate happening on Wednesday night. We are recording this on Wednesday morning. I almost hate to ask, but any predictions, Juanita?
Everybody on the stage will lose. Like, none of them will be the next president. Like I do feel like I do look forward to Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy like going at it because I think they're funny.
They're the new Pete and Amy for sure. The Pete and Amy.
Yes, they are the new Pete and Amy.
100%. I think DeSantis will continue to Homer Simpson into the bushes with his high heels on. And Chris Christie will keep screaming at people who don't want to listen. Like, that's it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as every other time.
You know, the one thing that was interesting about some of the polls that came out this week is that something like north of 60% of respondents, not Democrats, but all respondents said that if Trump were convicted in any one of these trials, they would find it disqualifying. So I do watch the debate and think, if not him, then who? And I will say, I mean, look, I'm in upstate New York. I don't know where these ads are coming from, but I have a bunch of Nikki Haley ads this morning on TV.
Interesting.
That are like, these boots are made for lying, and they're all anti-DeSantis. And I was like, you know what? Girl, you got money.
Into it.
Spend that money.
I'm into it.
Spend that money.
Nikki. Okay, fine, Nikki. I'll allow it. That is so funny.
Yeah.
I love the petty.
It's so petty. You know, the thing about DeSantis
the season for petty.
Tis the season to be petty. I don't care. Here's the thing. It doesn't really matter if men are short. It matters if they're awful and they feel bad about being short. Then, if they're awful people and they feel bad about being short, then it's fine to make fun of them for it. Just like it's fun. That's what a read is. A read is picking up on what your opponent feels bad about and saying it to them. That's just a read. But yeah, I've got to give it to Nikki for going there. That's great. That's great. I think at the next debate, they should just ask everyone to wear flip-flops on stage so we can finally put it to a rest whether or not DeSantis is wearing lifts in his shoes.